Hello everyone and welcome back to the EDH Jank Center, your source for everything Commander and everything Jank. I'm your host Jordan or Prairies, and today, babe, wake up! Wake up! It's time for another list! Another list of 10 super slept on cards, and this time, they're all under 50 cents. And I don't care if you have commitment issues, we don't take things slow here on the EDH Jank Center, so let's get right into it. Our first card today is Netherborn Altar, 1 in a black, artifact from Commander 2020. Tap, put a soul counter on Netherborn Altar. Put your commander into your hand from the command zone, then you lose 3 life for each soul counter on Netherborn Altar. Listen up. If you play black and you play commander, this needs to be in your deck. When I first saw this card, I could not believe how great this was, and all for under 50 cents. Its closest relative is Command Beacon, which is climbing over $5 now, I believe. So this card is just great at skirting around commander tax. For those of you who don't know, if your commander dies, gets exiled, gets sent into your deck by some effect, you can always choose to have it go back to your command zone rather than go to the graveyard into exile or be shuffled into your deck, which is a great aspect to our format. Our commander always has the option to never be truly iced, right? Wrong. Because in Commander, whenever we choose to put our commander back into our command zone from the battlefield, we now have to pay 2 more mana every time we want to cast it again. Just a quick example, let's say we're running Jury Master of the Review. That card costs 2 mana. If someone kills it, we put it back into our command zone. To cast it again, we now have to pay 4 mana. And then if someone kills it again, and we have to cast it again, it costs 6 mana, which can set you back a ton over the course of the game, but not with Netherborn Altar out, baby. We can tap it, put a soul counter on Netherborn Altar, and just put our commander into our hand. That way we do not have to pay the commander tax on it. And so to mitigate this effect, the designers of the card made us lose 3 life for each soul counter on Netherborn Altar. In other words, every time we use Netherborn Altar and add a counter onto it, we're going to be losing 3, 6, 9, 12 life, and so on and so forth. So 3 things to counter that. First of all, your life is a resource. You should use it. You shouldn't care about paying 3 or 6 life. If it's gonna get your commander back out onto the battlefield and help you win the game eventually, I'm all for it. Second of all, if you're concerned about life loss, depending on what color combination you're running, life gain is very easily accessible. And third, and most importantly, let me point you to one of my favorite insects for Magic the Gathering, Pharopede. It says it's unblockable, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may remove a counter from target permanent. So if we can get this little guy in for damage every single time we have to use our Netherborn Altar, we won't have to be paying anything more than 3 life each time we activate Netherborn Altar, and that's a very spicy synergy. Now let's move on. We're moving on to Westgate Regent, 3 black creature vampire from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. It has flying, ward, discard a card. Whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, counter it unless that player discards a card. Whenever Westgate Regent deals combat damage to a player, put that many +1/+1 counters on it, and it's a 4/4. So shout out to my friend Blaze for showing me this card. This card is an absolute house. This card is the budget beatdown king. So that ward ability is really good. We have to make opponents waste other resources in their hand if they want to take it out. And they are going to want to take it out. I mean, look at how handsome he is. And look at that stare. My God. But for real, this card is going to become a target really, really fast. But not only does it have built-in protection for itself, if someone does have the extra resources to discard a card in order to murder it or something like that, we also have so many options and ways to protect this card. So I'm not even worried about that part, which means we can move on to the best part of this card, which is that it's a big beatdown bully. Let's go. It's got super sweet built-in evasion, being a flyer, and then on top of that, if it deals combat damage just once, it goes from a 4/4 to an 8/8 flyer. And then the next time it deals combat damage, it'll be a 16/16, and that's without equipment, without tribal synergies, without instants like Unleash Fury that can double its power. I mean, we've got so many options here, guys. I don't see why you shouldn't be slotting this into any deck that wants to deal lots of combat damage. Moving on to a card that is newly under 50 cents due to its reprint in Double Masters, Magister Sphinx, 4 white, blue, black, artifact creature Sphinx, flying. When Magister Sphinx enters the battlefield, target player's life total becomes 10, and it's a 5/5. You are looking at, good denizens of the EDH Jank Center, my girlfriend's favorite way of killing people in Magic the Gathering. Put super simply, this card is a win con in and of itself. If you can ramp and play this early and take someone's life total down to 10 and then just swing in with some flyers, my girlfriend runs this in an Alayla deck where it's very lethal. Basically, you play this card and the game's in the bag, or almost there. Make some copies of this card and you've got the whole table begging for mercy. And if you're worried about mana cost, you can always run a Bolas's Citadel or something like that in order to play it off the top of your library by just paying life. There's lots of fun ways you can get this card out, ramping with mana rocks, etc. So don't even worry about it. Just pick up this card because it's cheap now and have your way with your opponents. Coming up next, we got Orcish Lumberjack, 1 red mana, summon Orc from Ice Age. You can tap it, sacrifice a forest to add 3 mana in any combination of red and or green to your mana pool. Play this ability as an interrupt. So without thinking of the obvious landfall synergies here, which we'll talk about in a second, I think this card is just amazing ramp if you really want to get going fast. You take one of your forests and trade it for 3 forests or 3 mountains. And I don't mean forests and mountains in the literal sense like you're going to get more lands. I'm just saying you're getting more mana, just to clear that up. But yeah, basically you're getting a dark ritual in red or green on a stick, which is amazing. Then add on top of that the synergies it has with cards like Lord Winggrace, and you've got yourself a highly synergistic, super cheaply costed, both monetarily and mana-wise, amazing ramp card. All right, next we got Mindlink Menk, 2 and a blue. Mindlink Menk? Ew. It's Mindlink Mech, 2 and a blue artifact vehicle from Neon Dynasty Kamigawa. It has flying. Whenever Mindlink Mech becomes crewed for the first time each turn, until end of turn, Mindlink Mech becomes a copy of target non-legendary creature that crewed it this turn, except it's 4/3, it's a vehicle artifact in addition to its other types, and it has flying, and it has crew 1, and it's a 4/3. So that's a lot of text, but basically this is a way to get any non-legendary creature that doesn't have flying in for flying damage. You can also protect it with artifact synergies that it wouldn't normally otherwise have, or it's just a nice way to get a creature that has a really dope combat damage ability in for more damage. So there are obviously lots and lots and lots of cards we could use as an example, but for today's example, I'm using Cephalid Constable, which is 1 blue creature Cephalid Wizard from the X set. What is that? 10th edition. Whenever Cephalid Constable deals combat damage to a player, return up to that many target permanents that player controls to their owner's hands, and it's a 1/1. So that's already a super powerful effect. We can return permanents to players' hands. However, it's just a 1/1 with no built-in evasion. And that is where our beautiful Mindlink Mech comes in. Because it only has crew 1, we can use 1/1s to just crew it, so we tap Cephalid Constable, basically turn Mindlink Mech into a 4/3 flying version of it, send it in for damage, and guess what? Now instead of just 1 damage and 1 permanent returned to an opponent's hand, we now can return 4 permanents to the owner's hands, and that gets pretty bonkers pretty fast. Alright, moving on to Blighted Steppe. Land from Battle for Zendikar. Tap to add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool. You can pay 3 and a white and tap it and sacrifice it. You gain 2 life for each creature you control. Nothing much else to say, but if you're running white, pick this card up. This is basically Congregate on a stick, and if you watch the channel before, you know how much I love Congregate. Now, it's not quite Congregate, I'll give you that, but gaining 2 life for each creature you control, even if you control 5 creatures, gets you 10 life, can help you last maybe 1 turn cycle more and help you get closer to the win. Bonus points if you combine this with something like Ramunap Excavator, which really loves cards going to the graveyard. You can replay Blighted Steppe every time you sack it, and the value engine will just keep going. Alright, let's get out of here and move on to Seraph of the Sword, 3 and a white creature angel from Core Set 2014. It has flying, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to Seraph of the Sword, and it's a 3/3. It's the White Fogbank. It's White Fogbank. Look at her. And while nothing will ever beat one of the best cards in the game, which is Fogbank, this card is really great because she can actually attack. I think this is a great secondary option in any Voltron build that's running white. If your Rafika the Many has been killed too many times, you can always just strap on all your equipment or auras onto Seraph the Sword. You can swing out with her, not having to worry about if she's going to die from combat damage, because she won't. She's also a great option to leave up for defense. She prevents all combat damage that will be dealt to her, so we can block with basically no worries. We don't have to worry about Death Touch. We don't have to worry about lifelink. We are safe in this Angel's Arms. Speaking of angels, this card also has angel synergies. What's there not to love? Speaking of love, I really love the utility of this next card. It's Deafening Clarion, 1 red-white sorcery from Guilds of Ravnica. Choose 1 or both. Deafening Clarion deals 3 damage to each creature. Creatures you control gain lifelink until end of turn. So you know me, on the EDH Jank Center, we love modality and utility, baby. So if you're facing down a lot of token decks, or you need some really amazing death triggers and killing a lot of tokens will do that for you, you can choose the first option, deal 3 damage to each creature. Or let's say you're the one running the token deck and you want to gain a ton of life, pow, you choose the second option, you give them all lifelink, you swing out and you gain a ton of life. Or you could choose both. Choosing both really helps out decks like Mael the Anima that has a ton of really big creatures that won't die to the deal 3 damage to each creature effect, and you'll be gaining a ton of life. Alright, coming up next, we got Junkwinder, 5 blue creature serpent from Modern Horizons 2. It has affinity for tokens. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each token you control. Whenever a token enters the battlefield under your control, tap target non-land permanent an opponent controls. It doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step, and it's a 5/6. Any deck that's running blue that makes Makes Tokens really loves this card because the tokens that you make throughout the course of the game help pay for this card's mana cost. And on top of that, it helps token decks by tapping down potential blockers that could be problematic for our strategy. And then on top of that, not only does it tap down non-land permanents on our turn, on their next untap step, they won't untap, which means on our next turn, we can swing in for damage yet again. This triggers for treasures, for clue tokens. This is also great in decks like Talran Sky Summoner and Orvar the Allform. This is an all-around great card, and for just over 20 cents, I think it's super worth an include. And wow, just like that, friends, we are already almost at the end of another video. But before we get into the last card of the day, I would love if you guys checked out the Patreon. The link is in the description. We've got lots of cool stuff going on the Patreon, including a patron-only Discord where we talk about our favorite cards, our new sets that come out, spoilers. We also get in for spell table games every now and again. It's a super fun community, and there's also lots of other cool benefits to being a patron, so make sure you check that out and help support the channel. I really appreciate it. All right, with our last card of the day, this is a pet card of mine. This is Blood Mist, 3 in a red enchantment from Eldritch Moon. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature you control gains double strike until end of turn. Listen up, we're keeping it short, sweet, and to the point with this card. Any deck that likes combat, any creature that loves to deal combat damage, you want this card in the deck to double up on your combat damage triggers and to just double up on combat damage and take your opponent's life totals down. This turns things that wouldn't necessarily be threatening otherwise into threats. 4/4s into 8/8s and so on and so forth. You catch my drift. I'll be getting a Blood Mist if you don't go to TCG Player right now and buy this card. Alright guys, that brings us to an end of another video. If you really dug the video, make sure you give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and drop suggestions down in the comments below for what super slept on cards you think I missed. What kind of list do you think I should do next? I'm always down there in the comments interacting with you guys, so come on down and have a chat with me. Alright guys, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you on the next video.